All right, everyone. So, last time we talked a little bit about the farmers' problems, and we talked about some of the things that they wanted, like the coinage of or the uh, use of silver as or to back up the currency. We talked about tariffs, in particular, a protective tariff. They were also wanting a reduction in tariffs for goods that they exported. Something else that they wanted was the government ownership of railroads so they would not be abused by the long haul, short haul abuse that we talked about earlier. They also wanted the government ownership of the telegraph. All right. Something else that they wanted, of course, this never happened. This never happened. This has kind of gone a little back and forth. Something that did happen, though, was the direct election of senators. Now, it didn't happen right away. This was the 17th Amendment to the Constitution. I think it was passed in 1913. No. 1912, I think, and ratified in 1913. So something like that. So, basically what we're talking about here is really the late 1800s. So you're talking about the 1880s, for example. Okay. What are some other things? Well, first of all, how did senators? We just take that for granted, but how were senators elected? Well, it was basically the state senate chose the senators. Originally in the Constitution, all right. As you know, we have. Oh, that's not what I wanted to write. We have the executive branch. We have the legislative branch. And we have the judicial branch. The legislative branch is made up of the upper house, which is the Senate, and you have the lower house, which is the House of Representatives. Now, out of all of these, you have the Supreme Court, for example, part of the judicial branch. Out of all these, all right, which one, all right, really, got elected by the popular vote? Well, it wasn't the executive branch. As you know, the executive branch, all right, the president was chosen through the electoral college. Now, today it still is, but the thing is that let's say Louisiana in the last election voted for McCain. Okay. Well, what that meant was that McCain received all 9 votes. I don't know why I said 12. All 9 electoral votes from the electoral college. And then whoever gets a majority in the electoral college wins the presidency. If no one gets a majority in the electoral college, then it goes to the House of Representatives, and the House of Representatives votes on it. Now, originally in the upper house, the Senate or senators were chosen by state senates. The judicial branch, of course, was appointed by the president. So the only group that were actually voted for were representatives. Now, the president gets a 4-year term. A senator gets a 6-year term. If you're on the Supreme Court, you're there for life. But what about the House? House of Representatives, they get 2 years. And so, where did all this come from? Well, what you have to understand is that in a democracy, and I know I'm kind of going off tangent here, but that's okay, off on a tangent. What is democracy? Okay, well, it's basically rule by majority. Now, if we go all the way back and we look in ancient Greece and we look at Plato, at his writings, what he said was that there was basically 3 types of governments. One, all right, was a monarchy. The other was an aristocracy. And third was a democracy. Monarchy is ruled by one. An aristocracy is ruled by a few. And democracy is ruled by a majority. And so, left by themselves, all would eventually become a tyranny. This person, if it's not him, his son or daughter or his grandson or granddaughter would become a tyrant. If you have all the power in just a few, that will turn into, according to Plato, an oligarchy. All right, just a tyranny by a few. But what about democracy? I mean, that seems like the fairest way. Well, what you have to understand is that he stated that a majority can be just as tyrannical as one person. This is what we call majority tyranny. So, how do we solve this? What he said is to use a mixed government. Okay, this is what we call mixed government theory. And so basically, you combine a monarchy, all right, with an aristocracy or an oligarch, well, we should say aristocracy, with a democracy. And so that's kind of what we have. The executive branch, or the presidency, the prez. The aristocracy was the Senate, and the democracy was represented in the House of Representatives. Remember, originally these were the only guys that we voted for. Now, when I say we, actually, I'm not being very objective here. I'm kind of, because who could not vote in the late 1800s? Well, there were a lot of people that could not vote, especially, the most obvious were women. Now, after Reconstruction, many African Americans, all right, could vote, but then that is going to be another lecture. We're going to talk about how states started taking their right to vote away, which, from the 1880s all the way to 1965, most African Americans in the South could not vote. So let's get back, however, to the farmers. And we talked about some of the things that they wanted. Another thing that they wanted that they didn't get at the time, but we will see later on, was the secret ballot. This meant, sometimes called the Australian ballot, what this meant was when you went and vote, nobody knew who you voted for. This is very important. If you're working on a job and your boss says vote for this person, all right, and he's got somebody at the polling station seeing who you vote for, that's c'est pas bon ça. It's not good. All right. So that's another thing they wanted. They also wanted what we call the initiative. All right. The referendum. and recall. And what are these things? Okay, basically initiative, and you have this, you see all these things in California. A lot of times you'll hear in California, they have a lot of referendums in California. But what is an initiative? Basically, if you get, I mean, it works different in different states. Some states don't even necessarily have initiatives. Okay, I don't think all 50 states have initiative, but if you get enough signatures, you can introduce, the people can introduce legislation. A referendum is people vote for that legislation. A recall is, let's say one of you, runs for governor of Louisiana, and once you seem great, but then once you get in there, you start doing all kind of crazy stuff. Then we can get enough signatures to where we can have a recall election. If we recall you, then they would have another election. I mean, it's different. It's basically a way to get public, politicians out of office if they start doing crazy stuff. Now, the farmers, all right, this is some of the things that they wanted. These are some of the reforms, all right, that they pushed for. Okay. Now, all of this together, this became a big movement. You could say it's kind of like maybe the Tea Party or the Occupy people. I mean, it's sort of the same thing. And surprisingly, and I mean, what may surprise some people is that if you really look at the issues that some of these people are want, I mean, they're not that far off. That even though the Tea Party is more, on the right of the political spectrum, and the Occupy people are more on the left, if they could find some common ground, they could probably and coalesce here. They'd probably get a whole lot done. But the way things are, I mean, it's things tend to be kind of things are divided. People are divided, unfortunately, and we'll probably talk about that maybe in the next lecture of how oftentimes people in power want this. And I don't want to get all conspiratorial. I'm not one of these conspiracy people, that think that all these people in power get together in a room and figure out how things are going to go. It doesn't work that way. But there is that school of thought that people, the powers that be, people in government and industry, like for people to be divided. Who knows? Who knows? The one thing that I've learned the older I get is I really don't know that much. So anyway, what I want you to understand, and this is, I think, very important, is all these reforms, and were about giving people a greater voice. Giving people a greater voice. Okay? You could say democratization. Right? More democracy. More, all right, say so. Okay? Power, giving people more power over their lives. That's what all these reforms that we discussed, all right, like the silver standard, the use of the silver standard, all right, the reduction of tariff rates on exports, protective tariffs that were coming in, all right. Some people wanted a federal income tax. Actually, that's something I didn't talk about. A federal income tax, because they felt that this, the more money that you made, the more you should pay in taxes. This actually was passed in the 16th Amendment. Gave the federal government authority. All right, that's why some people that are, strict constructionists or strict constitutionalists say that they need to get rid of the income tax. It wasn't originally in the Constitution. Okay, so these are kind of, again, they give you a little idea of some of the things that the farmers wanted, and this all, like I said, this all led to the populist movement. Um, Actually, we can do a little bit more. And one of the things that I wanted to tell you is that women played a huge role in all of this. All right, you had one woman, very famous woman, um, Mary Elizabeth Leese. And Mary Elizabeth Leese, parents had been political exiles from Ireland. Her brothers had been killed in battle during the Civil War. Her father had died at the Confederate prison, the horrible Confederate prison at Andersonville. And she traveled from Pennsylvania to Kansas and became a teacher. And she raised a family. She had then um, she eventually became uh, the first attorney in Kansas. Right? She was a tall, fiery woman, and she urged farmers to raise less corn and to raise more hay. Right? Well, she was a major figure in the farmers' alliances and in the populist movement. By 1891, the farmers' alliances had I'm not sure exactly how many, but about 2 million members, which was pretty substantial. Okay, so we can end there.